debate. Look, in terms of the infected blood scandal, you mentioned this is an issue that is close to your heart. It's something you've done a lot of reporting on. We'll shortly be speaking to somebody whose family was affected by this. But in terms of compensating the victims of that scandal, why is there such a delay?
The really important thing to say first is, and this is chronicled, I've actually written a book on this subject, which is called Death in the Blood, and it chronicles the fact that governments of all colours for the past 5 decades have basically kicked the can down the road in terms of dealing with this as an issue. It's now coming up and looming into the sort of headlights for the government because the inquiry into the contaminated blood scandal is due to report back on the 20th of May. But actually what's already happened is that the judge who's overseeing that inquiry has come back with his final recommendations on compensation. He did that last Easter. So there is absolutely no reason why the government should be delaying making those decisions, and yet they are. We found out yesterday that they had said in their OBR forecast that the OBR had not taken this into account because they didn't know what the outcome of this inquiry was going to be. That is simply not true. We know exactly the compensation arrangements that the judge wants to see. There is no reason that that shouldn't have been counted and factored into the budget this month. So the question remains, why have they not done it? Well, the only reason that I can logically conclude is because they thought factoring in those payments, and there have been wildly differing views on what that figure could be for compensation, anywhere from between 4 billion and 22 billion, although I think the 22 billion is outlandish. That would really affect the Chancellor's headroom. And obviously what we know from this budget is he wanted to use all his financial firepower to cut taxes, because whatever happens, we will have an election before 2025.
And it stuns me still. I understand the maths behind it, the vast sums, but we've seen the way that the public is galvanised by issues like the post office scandal after the ITV drama to want to see justice for victims of these types of scandals. Surely there must be some element of feeling of responsibility, and even if you want to get cynical about it, a positive spin on this for somebody who is going for the election, saying, look, we help these people out.
I completely agree with you, and it's something that I have said repeatedly. Surely there should be some mileage and some capital in doing the right thing, but it seems sadly that this government prioritises that pre-election giveaway and the tax cuts over above doing the right thing by this very, very traumatised, damaged group of people who have already waited so long for justice.
It's extraordinary. Let's speak now to Jason Evans, who we mentioned before. His father died due to the infected blood scandal. Jason, thank you very much for making time for us this evening. You were listening to that conversation I just had with Caroline Wheeler in the studio. How does it feel to still be waiting for compensation?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, Caroline's done some great work, on this issue, reporting on this issue, assisting the campaign along with many other MPs, journalists, lawyers, campaigners. And yeah, look, it's gone on a very long time in my personal situation. I first attended a meeting with my father on this issue when I was 1 in 1990. I'm now 34 years old, still fighting the same battle that my father died fighting in 1993 when I was 4 years old. So this has gone on an awfully long time for me, but it's gone on even longer for a great many other people, both the bereaved families and those who were infected, who are sick and or dying. And look, I think I won't rehash what Caroline has said about the time frame, but the government are really, really lagging behind here. I think what's important to remember is that in December of last year, Rishi Sunak suffered his first ever defeat as Prime Minister when a clause was added to the Victims and Prisoners Bill saying that the government must establish an infected blood compensation system. So this is coming, that clause is in there. And I would just say to the government, particularly on the issue of interim payments for bereaved families, we were able to beat the government in the Commons, where the Conservatives have a majority. If they don't do the right thing, it was clear already that in the House of Lords, where they don't have that majority, we will beat them there. And I think the government faces huge embarrassment in the Lords, similar to what we saw with Rwanda the other evening. if they don't act on this. So I would say that's another factor of why the government should act on this. It's clear this is the will of not just the people, but Parliament in both houses.
Jason, talk to me about what the communication is like from the government, if there is enough of it, in terms of how do you liaise with them? What kind of updates do you get?
The best liaison I've had with any official or minister in the last 3+ years was last week when I was facing them in court over a freedom of information request. Well, I had great engagement because I represented myself. I was able to question some of the officials directly in that hearing. And this is over a freedom of information request I'd placed to get details of compensation out of the government, which the Information Commissioner had sided largely with me that the government should release the specific information I'd requested. And instead of doing that, the government lodged an appeal with the court to prevent releasing that information. And so that court case last week, we're waiting for the judgment. The judgment's due within a few weeks' time. That was the best engagement. People throughout the country impacted by this write endless letters, as do MPs. Some of those letters signed by hundreds of MPs, write endless letters to the Prime Minister, to the Paymaster General, to the Secretary of State for Health, to the Chancellor. A meaningful reply is never, ever given. And I would suggest that probably most of those letters never make it past the Ministerial Correspondence Unit. They get a bog standard copy and paste reply, though it has to be said, and it's been met with some mixed reaction, to say the least. Today, we heard in Parliament from the Leader of the House of Commons, Penny Mordaunt, that the Paymaster General, John Glenn, he's the Minister with responsibility for this area, is embarking on this 25-day tour of the UK to meet with people. And to be honest, it has received a mixed reaction because people are saying, you've had the Sir Robert Francis report in 22, you've had the inquiry's final recommendations in April last year, which endorsed that effectively. What is there to talk about? Get on with this and get it done. Now, I suspect my working theory is that what John Glenn will be trying to do is to get buy-in for the government's wording in the House of Lords over what the Victims and Prisoners Bill looks like. Because of what I said, the government will know they're weak in the Lords and we will beat them. That's my suspicion. But still, the government should just get on with this and get it done. We shouldn't be having to drag them, through legislation.
Jason, thank you very much for explaining that. I mean, it sounds like pulling teeth. The only reassurance I can get from that is the Freedom of Information Commissioner seems to be functioning as it should. Caroline was listening on the studio, nodding along to a lot of that. This is clearly reminiscent of a lot of what you've been dealing with and reporting on. Is there any hope for this group of people with a change in government?
Yes, I think there is. And actually, one of the really big watershed moments for the campaign recently came with that amendment that was tabled back in December, which actually defeated the government for the first time under Rishi Sunak. And actually, one of the things that came about when that happened was that Labour came out and supported Diana Johnson's amendment. And that was a real change. There'd been lots of kind of fear, I think, within the Labour ranks of making any commitment towards the compensation payments, because it was an unfunded spending commitment. And as we know from all of the coverage of the budget, that is the really difficult thing for both Labour and the existing government is the headroom that they're going to have to do anything as we move forward. So actually having Labour's support for that amendment was really key. And actually I saw Sir Keir Starmer come and address campaigners only last week when there was a mass lobby of Parliament the week before the budget. And one of the campaigners came up and spoke to him during that and said to him, if this government doesn't sort it out, will Labour commit to doing so? And Sir Keir Starmer said yes.
Caroline Wheeler, political editor of the Sunday Times. Thank you. And Jason Evans as well. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience of this.